Welcome to Sleepless Ancient Odyssey. The day is done. It is time now to let the noise of your world fade into silence. Find your most comfortable position, and for the next few moments, simply relax. Tonight's Odyssey is about to begin. Tonight, our journey takes us to a narrow pass between mountain and sea, where the fate of the Western world hung in the balance. We will witness 300 warriors face an empire that stretched from the Aegean to the Indus. We will walk among Spartans who knew they marched toward death, yet marched willingly. And we will seek to understand how a defeat became the most celebrated last stand in human history. This is not merely history. This is the story of how mortal men stood against the inevitable and transformed their doom into legend. Whether you are here for a story to captivate your mind or a grand narrative to accompany you to sleep, your journey starts now. If you enjoy these odysseys, subscribe and join us every time we travel to the past. Now, let us begin. The sun rises over Persepolis, capital of the greatest empire the world has ever known. Towering columns cast long shadows across courtyards where delegates from 100 nations wait to prostrate themselves before the King of Kings. Gold glitters on every surface. The scent of frankincense drifts through halls so vast they seem to mock the scale of ordinary human ambition. This is the heart of the Achaemenid Empire in the year 480 before the Common Era. From the palaces of Susa to the satrapies of Bactria, from the shores of the Mediterranean to the mountains of Hindu Kush, the Persian realm encompasses territories so vast that the sun never sets upon them all at once. 28 nations bow before the peacock throne. The treasury holds wealth beyond calculation. The armies number in the hundreds of thousands. And yet, for Xerxes, son of Darius, grandson of Cyrus the Great, it is not enough. 10 years have passed since Marathon, where his father's invasion of Greece ended in unexpected humiliation. 10,000 Greek hoplites had shattered a Persian force twice their size on the beaches north of Athens. The news had traveled back to Persia like a wound that would not heal. Darius had sworn vengeance but died before he could exact it. Now that oath falls to his son. Xerxes stands at a window overlooking his capital, and in his mind he sees not the empire he possesses, but the small, fractious peninsula across the Aegean that dares to defy him. Greece, with its quarreling city-states, its primitive economies, its laughable pretensions to independence, a collection of cities that should have been absorbed into the empire generations ago. The decision is made, not merely to punish Athens and Eretria for their roles in the Ionian revolt, but to subjugate all of Greece, to extend Persian dominion to the very edge of the known world. This will be no mere punitive raid. This will be a conquest so overwhelming that resistance becomes unthinkable. For 4 years, the empire mobilizes. In shipyards, from Phoenicia to Egypt, craftsmen build a fleet of 1,200 warships. In Anatolia, engineers construct supply depots and granaries. A canal is dug through the peninsula of Athos to spare the fleet from having to round its treacherous cape. 2 pontoon bridges are built across the Hellespont, each one a marvel of engineering, using hundreds of ships lashed together to create a roadway wide enough for 2 chariots to pass. The army that gathers is unlike anything the ancient world has seen. Herodotus, writing a generation later, will claim that it numbered over 2 million souls. Modern scholars suggest perhaps 200,000 combatants, with support personnel swelling the total to perhaps 500,000. Even at the conservative estimate, it is a migration, a nation in motion. Persians in scale armor and tall felt caps, Medes with leather tunics, Assyrians with bronze helmets, Bactrians carrying bows of cane, Indians wrapped in cotton, Ethiopians in leopard skins, Thracians with fox-skin caps. The diversity is staggering, a living demonstration of imperial power. The cavalry alone numbers 80,000. The immortals, The elite corps of 10,000 warriors, whose ranks are immediately refilled when one falls, march in perfect formation. Their spears catch the light like a forest of metal growing from the earth. Their shields gleam like scales on some primordial serpent. This is the force that crosses the Hellespont in the spring of 480. It takes 7 days and 7 nights for the entire host to cross. The bridges groan under the weight. The sea itself seems to strain against the chains that hold it. When Xerxes reviews his army and navy at Dariscus, he is said to have wept. Artabanus, his uncle, asks why tears accompany such magnificence. Xerxes replies that he weeps at the brevity of human life, for of all these thousands before him, not one will be alive in 100 years. The irony escapes him. For many, death lies not a century hence, but mere months away. 700 miles to the south and west, in the harsh valley of the Eurotas River, another society prepares for war. But Sparta is not mobilizing. Sparta is always mobilized. War is not an interruption of Spartan life. War is the purpose of Spartan life. Let us understand this place, for without understanding Sparta, we cannot comprehend what happens at Thermopylae. Sparta is an anomaly among Greek city-states. While Athens celebrates philosophy, drama, and democracy, Sparta celebrates only one virtue, martial excellence. The entire society is organized around creating the perfect warrior. Everything else is secondary. A Spartan boy is examined at birth. If he appears weak or deformed, he is carried to the apothete, a chasm at the foot of Mount Taygetus, and left to die. The strong survive. The weak are culled. This is the first lesson. At age 7, if he has survived, the boy is taken from his mother and enrolled in the agoge, the brutal education system that will consume the next 13 years of his life. He is given one cloak for all seasons. He sleeps on reeds. He gathers himself from the riverbank. He is kept constantly hungry, encouraged to steal food, beaten savagely if he is caught, punished not for stealing, but for incompetence. He learns to read and write, but only what is necessary. Music and poetry are studied, but only to learn rhythm for marching and courage from the old songs. Everything else is training for war: wrestling, boxing, javelin, spear. The phalanx formation practiced until it becomes instinctive, until 30 men move as one organism. At 20, if he survives, he becomes a warrior. But he does not yet enjoy full citizenship. He must be elected to a sicyon, a military mess, where he will eat every meal for the rest of his life with the same 15 men. If accepted, he marries, but he does not live with his wife. He continues to sleep in the barracks until age 30. His wife's head is shaved on their wedding night. Some scholars suggest this is to ease the transition for men accustomed to the company of other men. Children are produced as a duty, not a joy. This system creates something unprecedented, a professional warrior class in an era of citizen soldiers. While other Greeks train for war occasionally, between harvest and planting, Spartans train for nothing else. While other cities field armies of farmers who happen to fight, Sparta fields an army of fighters who happen to have farms, tended by the enslaved Helot population. The result is visible in every movement. A Spartan phalanx does not simply march. It flows like water, cohesive and unstoppable. The shields overlap with geometric precision. The spears thrust in perfect unison. The formation can wheel, advance, retreat, compress, and expand without breaking. It is not men fighting. It is a single armored beast with thousands of legs and hundreds of spears. This is perhaps their most unsettling quality. They fear only dishonor. To return from battle without one's shield, to retreat without orders, to show cowardice in any form, these are the unforgivable sins. Death in battle is not tragedy. It is the consummation of a life properly lived. Spartan mothers tell their sons, "Return with your shield or on it." There is no third option. In this valley of harsh laws and harder men, news of the Persian advance arrives like distant thunder. Athens sends envoys. The oracle at Delphi delivers cryptic prophecies. Messengers bring reports of the size of the approaching army, numbers so large they seem like fantasy. The Spartan response is deliberation. This is the month of Carnaia, a sacred festival during which Spartan law forbids warfare. The ephors, the 5 elected officials who govern Sparta, debate. To march now would violate sacred custom. To wait might doom Greece. A compromise is reached. Sparta will send an advance force, a symbolic contingent to join the allied Greek resistance at a strategic location, while the main army finishes the religious observances and then follows. This advance force will be small, 300 men, chosen personally by King Leonidas. But not just any 300 men. Leonidas selects only those with living sons. The significance of this choice echoes through the barracks. Everyone understands. This is not a deployment. This is a sacrifice. These men are chosen to die so that their bloodlines continue through their sons. Leonidas himself is nearly 60, ancient for a warrior. He is the younger son who never expected to be king. His older brother Cleomenes had ruled, descended into madness, and died under mysterious circumstances. Leonidas inherited a throne he never sought, and a crisis he cannot avoid. He chooses his men carefully, veterans all, fathers all, men who have lived full lives and will leave sons to remember them. There are no young warriors in this 300, no untested boys eager for glory, only hard men who understand exactly what is being asked of them. They prepare in silence. They oil their armor. They sharpen their spears. They braid their long hair, which Spartan warriors grow and groom with almost feminine care. Long hair, they say, makes a handsome man more handsome and a frightening man more frightening. Before battle, they comb it carefully. If they are to die, they will die beautiful. The night before departure, Leonidas dines with his wife, Gorgo. She is the daughter of Cleomenes, both wife and niece, though such arrangements are not unusual among Spartan royalty. She is known for her intelligence, one of the few Greek women whose words are recorded by historians. As he prepares to leave, she asks him what she should do. He gives her an answer that will be remembered for millennia. Marry a good man and have good children. He knows he will not return. She knows he will not return. This is their farewell. While Sparta deliberates and Persia advances, the rest of Greece descends into controlled panic. The threat is existential. If Persia conquers Greece, Hellenic civilization ends. Greek culture, philosophy, governance, all of it will be absorbed into the vast, homogenizing empire. The very concept of the free city-state will disappear. But unity does not come easily to the Greeks. They are a fractious people, quick to quarrel, slow to cooperate. Athens and Sparta have been rivals for generations. Thebes harbors old grudges against Athens. Argos maintains a blood feud with Sparta. Dozens of smaller cities pursue their own interests with little regard for the collective good. Yet the Persian threat is so overwhelming that even Greeks cannot ignore it. A congress is called at Corinth. Delegates from 31 city-states attend. This, in itself, is remarkable. Greek unity on anything is rare. Greek unity in the face of external threat is nearly unprecedented. The Athenians arrive with a navy of 200 triremes, the largest fleet in Greece, built with silver from the mines at Laurium. Their general, Themistocles, is already thinking several moves ahead. He understands that this war will be won or lost at sea, that Xerxes' massive army cannot be sustained without naval supply lines, but he also knows that the army must be delayed long enough for the naval strategy to work. The Spartans arrive with prestige but little immediate military contribution. Their main army is detained by religious festivals, but their reputation alone carries weight. If Sparta is willing to fight, others take courage. The strategic problem is daunting. Xerxes is advancing south through Thrace and Macedonia, absorbing territories as he goes. Some Greek cities eagerly submit, offering earth and water, the traditional symbols of submission to Persian authority. Others waver, waiting to see which way the wind blows. The Greeks need to fight the Persians somewhere that negates their numerical advantage. In open terrain, the Persians will simply envelop and crush any Greek force. But if the Greeks can find a place where geography restricts the Persian deployment, where numbers become irrelevant, they might have a chance. 2 locations are chosen. The fleet will engage at Artemisium, a strait off the coast of Euboea. The army will make its stand at Thermopylae, the hot gates, so named for the thermal springs that bubble from the ground, creating a permanent mist that hangs over the area like a veil. It is a narrow pass between the mountains and the sea, the primary route from northern to southern Greece. The pass is so narrow that in places only a single wagon can traverse it. Vertical cliffs on one side, the ocean on the other. Here, the allied Greeks decide they will stop Xerxes. The force that gathers at Thermopylae numbers perhaps 7,000 men. 300 Spartans under Leonidas, 700 Thespians, 400 Thebans, whose loyalty is suspect, but who come nonetheless. 1,000 Phocians, contingents from Mycenae, Corinth, Mantinea, and a dozen smaller cities. Not an army, really, a coalition, a desperate alliance held together by fear and the fragile hope that it might work. Leonidas takes command, not because Sparta contributes the most men, but because only a Spartan king carries enough prestige to lead Greeks from different cities. Athens has more soldiers, Corinth has more wealth, but neither has the mystique of Sparta. The Greeks arrive at Thermopylae in late August. The pass is as narrow as promised. At its tightest point, only 15 meters wide. The old Phocian wall still stands, crumbling but defensible. They set to work rebuilding it, mortaring stones, sharpening stakes, preparing the ground. From the wall, they can see north along the pass. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the Persian host approaches. Reports filter in. The advance scouts have been sighted. The main army is 3 days away, 2 days, 1 day, and then, one morning, the northern horizon darkens, not with storm clouds, but with dust, the dust of 1,000,000 feet. The Persians have arrived. The Persian army does not arrive all at once. It seeps into view like a slow flood. First come the scouts, horsemen who survey the pass and wheel back to report. Then the advance units, light infantry spreading across the landscape like oil on water. Then the main host, a river of humanity that takes hours to pass any given point. From the rebuilt Phocian wall, the Greeks watch in silence. There are no words adequate for what they are seeing. The Persian force stretches back as far as the eye can perceive. Campfires that night will number in the tens of thousands. The sound of that many men, that many animals, that much equipment creates a low rumble that seems to come from the earth itself. Xerxes establishes his command post on high ground overlooking the pass. His throne is brought, a work of gold and precious stones. From this elevated position, he can observe the entire battlefield. He can see the narrow passage. He can see the Greeks huddled behind their wall. He can see the sea to the east and the mountains to the west. What he sees must seem absurd. Fewer than 10,000 Greeks preparing to resist an army of hundreds of thousands. It is not merely foolish. It is incomprehensible. What do these people imagine they can accomplish? On the 4th day after the Persians arrive, Xerxes sends a herald. The message is simple: surrender your arms and you will be spared. The Greeks need only acknowledge Persian supremacy, bow before the King of Kings, and this can end without bloodshed. Leonidas's response enters history. Molen Lab, come and take them. The herald returns to Xerxes and delivers the Spartan king's answer. Xerxes, we are told, laughs. Very well. 4 days to watch the Persian army prepare, 4 days to count the campfires and understand their situation is hopeless, 4 days to let their courage crumble. But Xerxes fundamentally misunderstands who he is dealing with. During these 4 days of waiting, a Persian scout rides close to the Greek position to observe. What he reports back to Xerxes seems to confirm that the Greeks have lost their minds. The Spartans, the scout says, are outside the wall exercising naked. Some are combing their long hair. They appear to be engaged in athletic games. They do not act like men about to fight for their lives. They act like men at a festival. Xerxes finds this baffling. He summons Demaratus, an exiled Spartan king now in Persian service, and asks for an explanation. Demaratus tells him something the King of Kings does not want to hear. The Spartans, Demaratus explains, prepare their bodies and groom their hair before battle because they are about to face death. It is their custom to appear beautiful when they fight, and they do not fear the Persian multitude because Spartans are trained from childhood to fear only dishonor. Death holds no terror for them. Xerxes dismisses this as the rambling of a bitter exile, but Demaratus presses his point. These men will not surrender, he insists. They will fight until they are all dead, and though they are few, they are the finest warriors in Greece. Xerxes has heard enough. On the 5th day, he orders the attack. Dawn breaks cool and clear. The morning wind carries salt from the sea. The Medes and Scythians will attack first, fresh troops eager to prove themselves. They number 10,000. The expectation is that they will simply crush the Greek line through sheer weight of numbers. The attack begins mid-morning. The Medes advance in loose formation, thousands of men moving up the pass toward the Phocian wall. They carry spears shorter than the Greek dory. Their armor is lighter, leather, and wicker shields rather than the heavy bronze of the hoplites. They rely on mobility and archery, tactics perfectly suited for the open plains of Asia but poorly adapted to this narrow, confined space. The Greeks wait. Leonidas has positioned his men carefully. The Spartans hold the center. Other allied contingents are arranged on the flanks and in reserve. The formation is 8 men deep, each file a column of overlapping shields. The front rank crouches slightly, spears angled forward. This is the phalanx, the formation that has dominated Greek warfare for 2 centuries. It is not sophisticated, it is not flexible, but in terrain like this, against opponents like these, it is devastatingly effective. The Medes reach the wall and surge forward, climbing over it, pressing toward the Greek line. For a moment, the 2 forces are separated by mere feet, and then they collide. The sound is terrible, bronze on bronze, wood splintering, men screaming. The Medes crash against the phalanx like a wave against rocks. The Greek line does not bend. The longer Greek spears, the dory measuring 7 to 9 feet, strike the Persians before the Persian weapons can reach the Greeks. Men in the front rank of the Median advance are impaled before they can close the distance. Those behind push forward, trampling the wounded, and die in turn. The Greeks push back. The phalanx, all 8 ranks moving in unison, surges forward half a step, then another, driving the Persians back through sheer coordinated mass. The Spartans grunt in rhythmic unison with each thrust, a sound like some great beast breathing. The Medes break. It takes less than an hour. They have never faced anything like this. The coordination, the discipline, the sheer immovable solidity of the phalanx is beyond their experience. They retreat in disorder, streaming back up the pass, leaving their dead heaped before the Greek wall. Xerxes watches from his throne. What he has just witnessed makes no sense. 10,000 Medes, brave soldiers who have conquered nations, repulsed by a fraction of their number. By midday, the Persian casualties number in the thousands, the Greek casualties number in the dozens. The mathematics are impossible. At this rate, Xerxes could lose his entire army before killing all the Greeks. When one falls, another immediately takes his place, maintaining the unit at exactly 10,000 men. The immortals are skilled. They coordinate their attacks. They probe for weaknesses in the phalanx. They fight with ferocity and tactical intelligence, and they achieve nothing. The phalanx holds. Spartans in the front ranks fight with mechanical precision. The immortals discover what the Medes and Scythians learned earlier. Courage means nothing against a phalanx in confined terrain. And as long as they hold their formation, they cannot be moved. Leonidas employs a tactic that sows confusion among the Persians. At intervals, the Greek line appears to break. The pursuing Persians, now strung out and disordered, are caught in a killing zone. By late afternoon, even the immortals withdraw. The first day of battle ends. The pass is choked with Persian dead. The Greeks have lost perhaps 100 men. They retire behind their wall, eat a simple meal, tend their wounded, and prepare for the next day. From his throne, Xerxes stares at the narrow pass, where the finest soldiers of his empire have been humiliated. Whether this is true or dramatic embellishment, the meaning is clear. The King of Kings has encountered something he did not anticipate. Greek stubbornness backed by Greek steel. The second day dawns much like the first. The Persians have spent the night regrouping. Fresh troops have been brought forward. Wounded have been carried away. The dead have been collected, though there are so many that the task is incomplete. Bodies still litter the approaches to the Greek wall. Xerxes tries a different approach. Perhaps shock troops and elite infantry are poorly suited to this kind of grinding, close-quarters combat. Perhaps what is needed is a more methodical assault. He sends in units trained in siege warfare, men who carry scaling equipment and heavy shields. The idea is to approach the Greek wall in testudo formation, shields overhead against any missiles, then overwhelm the defenders through sheer persistence. It fails. The Greeks rain spears, rocks, and anything else they can hurl down on the approaching Persians. The siege troops reach the wall and attempt to scale it. Greek spears thrust down from above. Men fall screaming. The siege equipment is abandoned. The attack collapses. Throughout the day, Xerxes sends wave after wave against the Greek position. Different units, different tactics, different commanders. The result is always the same. The phalanx holds. The Persians die in heaps. The pass becomes a charnel house. The allies rotate units in and out of the line. While Spartans hold the center, Thespians fight on the flanks. Then Phocians take a turn. Then Mycenaeans. The rotation keeps the frontline troops fresh while the Persians exhaust themselves in continuous assault. By the second afternoon, Persian morale is cracking. These are men who have conquered Babylon, who have subjugated Egypt, who have marched from one end of the world to the other, and they cannot dislodge a few thousand Greeks from a narrow pass. Whispers begin in the camp. Perhaps this invasion is cursed. Perhaps the gods favor the Greeks. Xerxes is desperate now. He offers rewards for anyone who can find a way past the Greek position. Vast sums of gold, promotion, land, anything. He will accept any solution, no matter how unlikely, because the alternative is admitting defeat and withdrawing, and that is politically impossible. He has committed too much. The entire empire is watching. And then, as night falls on the second day, a solution presents itself. A local Greek named Ephialtes comes to the Persian camp. He seeks an audience with Xerxes. He has information, he claims, that will change everything. For a price, he will betray his own people. Ephialtes knows of a path, a goat trail through the mountains that circles behind the Greek position. It is narrow and treacherous, unsuitable for large forces, but a few thousand men could traverse it in a night and emerge behind the Greek lines by dawn. The Greeks would be trapped between two Persian forces, their defensive advantage nullified. Xerxes listens. He summons his commanders. Hydarnes, leader of the Immortals, confirms that such a flanking maneuver is feasible. The troops are rested. The night will be dark, obscuring their movement. If the Greeks have any defenders on the mountain path, they will be few and unprepared. The plan is set. Hydarnes will lead a force of perhaps 10,000 men, including the Immortals, along the mountain path. They will march through the night. By dawn, they will be in position to attack the Greek rear. At the same time, the main Persian force will assault the wall from the front. The Greeks, caught between two fires, will be annihilated. Ephialtes leads them to the trailhead. As darkness falls, the Persian column begins its ascent. They move quietly, weapons muffled, torches forbidden. The path is narrow and treacherous. Men slip on loose stones. In places the trail skirts cliffs where a misstep means death. But they press on, driven by the promise of victory. The Greeks are not entirely unprepared. Leonidas has posted the Phocian contingent, 1,000 men, to guard the mountain path. But the Phocians are positioned higher up the mountain, expecting any attack to come from the direction of their homeland, not from the Persian camp. When they finally hear the Immortals approaching in the pre-dawn darkness, they are caught off guard. There is a brief skirmish. Arrows fly in the darkness. The Phocians, outnumbered and confused, retreat to higher ground, assuming they are the primary target. They prepare to defend a position off the main path. It takes them precious minutes to realize the Persians are not pursuing them. The Immortals continue down the path toward the Greek rear, ignoring the Phocians entirely. A runner from the Phocian contingent races down the mountain to warn Leonidas. He arrives at the Greek camp just before dawn, breathless and terrified. The Persians, he reports, have found the mountain path. They will be behind the Greek position within hours. Leonidas receives the news in the gray light before dawn. Around him, his commanders wait for orders. The situation is clear. The defensive position is about to be compromised. In a few hours, the Persians will attack from both front and rear. The Greeks will be surrounded. A council is quickly convened. The allied commanders debate their options. Some argue for immediate retreat. The position is lost. They should fall back, preserve their forces, fight another day. Others argue for a fighting withdrawal, holding the pass long enough for most of the army to escape before the trap closes. Leonidas listens to all of them. Then he makes his decision. Most of the army will withdraw. The allied contingents from Corinth, Mantinea, Orchomenos, and the other cities will leave immediately, marching south to safety. They will live to fight at Salamis, at Plataea, in the battles yet to come. Their survival serves Greece, but the Spartans will remain. The 300 will hold the pass, and buy time for the others to escape. Leonidas will not abandon his post. This is what he came here to do. The Thespians refuse to leave. Their commander, Demophilus, insists that his 700 men will stay and fight beside the Spartans. It is not courage, exactly, or not merely courage. It is a kind of civic pride. Thespiae will not be remembered as the city that abandoned Sparta in its final hour. The Thebans also remain, though their loyalty is questionable. Some ancient sources suggest they are kept as hostages to prevent Thebes from immediately surrendering to Persia. Others suggest they stay willingly, caught between conflicting loyalties and paralyzed by indecision. As dawn breaks, the main body of the Greek army begins its withdrawal. Thousands of men march south through the pass, moving quickly, glancing back at the shrinking number of warriors who remain at the wall. They know what they are witnessing. They are watching men die, not in the chaos of battle, but in the cold calculation of necessity, a sacrifice to buy hours. Leonidas and his remaining forces, perhaps 1,400 men in total, prepare for the last act. There will be no retreat now, no clever tactics, no feigned withdrawals, only the certainty of death and the question of how many Persians they can take with them. The king gives orders. They will not wait behind the wall. That is a defensive posture, and defense is no longer the objective. The objective is to kill as many Persians as possible before being overwhelmed. They will fight in the open at the widest part of the pass, where they have room to deploy fully. The Spartans arm themselves with deliberate care. They strap on their bronze cuirasses, muscle anatomy hammered into the metal. They don their helmets, the bronze covering everything but the eyes and mouth, transforming human faces into identical masks of war. They slide their arms through the porpacks and grip the anti-labe of their aspis shields, round and concave, layered wood and bronze weighing 15 pounds. They grasp their spears, and they comb their hair. This is the detail that ancient sources emphasize. In the hour before their final battle, the Spartans comb and arrange their long hair with meticulous attention. It is a ritual, a statement. We will die beautiful. We will die as Spartans. The Persians attack from the front with the dawn. Thousands of infantry rush the Greek position. But something has changed in the Greek formation. They are not holding a line. They are attacking. The Spartans surge forward to meet the Persian charge. Shields locked, spears thrusting. They drive into the Persian ranks like a wedge, splitting formations, creating chaos. Leonidas fights in the front rank. A Spartan king leading from the front is traditional, but it is still remarkable. He is nearly 60, older than almost anyone on the battlefield, and he fights with savage efficiency. His spear rises and falls. Men die. The Spartans around him maintain perfect cohesion even as they advance into the Persian mass. The battle becomes a melee, brutal and intimate. Spears shatter. The Spartans draw their Sipho swords, short blades designed for close combat. They stab upward into unarmored groins, downward into necks and shoulders. The Persians stumble over their own dead. The pass is so choked with bodies that footing becomes treacherous. This is what Herodotus calls the greatest fight. The Spartans abandon all thought of survival and fight with the fury of men who know they are already dead. They seek only to make their deaths costly, and they succeed. The Persians fall in astounding numbers. Later estimates will suggest that 20,000 Persians die in the final battle, though the number is impossible to verify. At some point during the morning, Leonidas falls. Two of Xerxes' brothers, Abracomes and Hyperanthes, die trying to reach him. His body becomes the center of a savage contest. 4 times the Spartans drive the Persians back and recover their king's corpse. 4 times the Persians rally and try to take it. The fighting over Leonidas' body is so intense that the ground becomes mud, blood mixing with dust. The Persians cannot break through from the front, but then the immortals arrive from the mountain path, falling upon the Greek rear. The trap closes. The Spartans and Thespians are surrounded. They retreat to a small hill within the pass, a defensive position they had scouted earlier. Dragging their wounded and the body of Leonidas, they form a circle, shields outward, and prepare for the end. By now, most have lost their spears. Many have lost their swords. They fight with broken weapons, with their fists, with their teeth. The Persians do not close with them. The cost has been too high. Instead, they stand back and use arrows. The sky darkens with missiles. Thousands of arrows arc through the air and fall like lethal rain. The Greeks raise their shields, creating a canopy of bronze. But there are too many arrows coming from too many directions. Shafts find gaps in the armor. Men fall with arrows in their throats, their eyes, their groins. The end, when it comes, is gradual. Not a single moment of defeat, but a slow erosion. One by one, the defenders fall. The circle contracts. Fewer shields, fewer men. The Thebans, if they are still fighting, surrender at some point. Those sources differ on when and under what circumstances. The Spartans fight until the very last. The final defenders, perhaps 50 men, are buried under a storm of arrows and spears. They die on their feet, shields still raised, facing the enemy. When the Persians finally approach the hill, they find only corpses. Every Greek is dead. The pass is won, but the cost is staggering. Herodotus claims 20,000 Persians died in the 3 days of battle. Even if this is an exaggeration, even if the real number is half or a quarter of that, it represents a catastrophic loss for what should have been a minor skirmish. Xerxes, surveying the battlefield, orders Leonidas's body found and desecrated. The Spartan king's head is cut off and mounted on a pike. His body is crucified. This is a violation of Persian custom, which treats enemy dead with respect. But Xerxes is not thinking rationally. He is furious and humiliated. This small force of Greeks has cost him days, thousands of men, and the aura of invincibility that had accompanied his army. The Greeks are dead. The pass is clear. The Persian army resumes its march south. But something has changed. The soldiers who marched so confidently into Greece now march in silence. They have seen what awaits them. They have learned that Greek warriors do not surrender, do not retreat, and die very, very hard. The news of Thermopylae spreads across Greece like wildfire. The details are horrific and glorious in equal measure. 300 Spartans and 700 Thespians dead to the last man. The pass held for 3 days against the entire Persian army, Leonidas fighting in the front rank until he fell. The final stand on the hill, arrows darkening the sky, but the immediate military situation remains dire. The Persians march south unopposed. They burn the abandoned city of Athens. The Acropolis is desecrated. The temples are put to the torch. For the Athenians, who have evacuated to Salamis and watched their city burn from across the water, it is devastating. And yet, the delay at Thermopylae has provided something crucial: time. While Leonidas held the pass, the Athenian fleet completed its preparations. The Greek naval strategy took final form. Defensive positions were chosen and fortified. Evacuation of civilians reached completion. Those 3 days, bought with Spartan blood, make all the difference. At Salamis, the Greek fleet, now united under Spartan nominal command, but following Athenian tactical leadership, engages the Persian navy. Themistocles lures the Persian ships into the narrow straits where their numerical advantage becomes a liability. Greek triremes, heavier and designed for ramming, crash into the lighter Persian vessels. The Persian fleet is decimated. Xerxes, watching from a throne on the shore, sees his naval power shattered in a single day. Without naval superiority, Xerxes cannot sustain his massive army in Greece. Supply lines are too long. The fall campaign season is ending. He withdraws most of his forces to Asia, leaving a substantial army under Mardonius to continue the campaign in the spring. The following year, at Plataea, the largest Greek army ever assembled meets Mardonius's force in open battle. The Spartans, arriving in full strength this time with thousands of warriors, anchor the Greek line. The phalanx, fighting on more favorable terrain with larger numbers, proves unstoppable. Mardonius is killed. The Persian army is routed. Greece is saved. But none of this would have been possible without Thermopylae. The 3-day stand accomplished something beyond its immediate tactical value. It proved that Persians could bleed, that the empire's armies were not invincible, that resistance was not futile. Every Greek city that had wavered in its loyalty, wondering whether to submit to Xerxes or fight, received an answer written in Spartan blood: fight. The propaganda value is immeasurable. Stories of the battle spread. Poets compose verses. Artists depict the scenes. Within a generation, Thermopylae has become the defining symbol of Greek resistance. The Spartans return to collect their dead after the Persian withdrawal. They find Leonidas' body and bring it home for proper burial. A stone lion is later erected at Thermopylae, marking the spot where he fell. The lion becomes a pilgrimage site. The epitaph composed for the monument is stark in its simplicity. Attributed to the poet Simonides, it reads, "Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here obedient to their laws we lie." No boasting, no description of heroism, just a simple statement of fact. We did our duty. We obeyed orders. We died where we were told to stand. This is the Spartan ideal distilled to its purest form. Not glory-seeking or individualism, but absolute obedience to the state and its laws. The epitaph does not even mention Leonidas by name. Individual identity is subsumed into the collective. We lie here, not I, we. In the decades and centuries following the battle, Thermopylae transcends its historical reality and enters the realm of myth. The story is told and retold, each retelling adding layers of meaning, symbolism, and occasionally embellishment. Greek authors emphasize different aspects depending on their purposes. Herodotus, writing only a generation after the battle, focuses on the clash of cultures. For him, Thermopylae represents the fundamental difference between free men fighting for their homes and enslaved subjects fighting for a tyrant. The Greeks, he argues, fight better because they choose to fight. Later, Athenian writers use Thermopylae to glorify the Greek victory over Persia more broadly, positioning it within the larger narrative of democratic Athens saving civilization. The Spartan sacrifice becomes a prelude to Athenian achievements at Salamis and the subsequent naval empire. For Spartans themselves, Thermopylae becomes the ultimate expression of Spartan values. Every element of the story reinforces what Sparta teaches its citizens: obedience to law, even unto death, preference for honorable death over shameful survival, devotion to the state above personal welfare. The battle becomes a pedagogical tool, a story told to young Spartans to illustrate what is expected of them. The 300 are remembered individually, their names recorded and honored, but they are also remembered collectively as a unit, the perfect embodiment of Spartan discipline. They did not panic, they did not flee, they did not question orders. They stood and died because that is what Spartans do. Other Greek cities remember their own contributions. Thespiae honors its 700 who stayed with the Spartans. Their choice is remarkable in its own right. Thespiae was not a military powerhouse like Sparta. It was a small city with no tradition of military excellence. Yet when the moment came, 700 Thespians chose death over retreat. Their sacrifice is less famous than the Spartans, but no less absolute. The story spreads beyond Greece. Roman writers rediscover Thermopylae and see in it parallels to their own military values. The Roman virtue of pietas, of duty to state and gods, mirrors the Spartan commitment. Roman soldiers are told the story as an example of how discipline conquers numbers. In the Renaissance, as Europe rediscovers classical texts, Thermopylae is again celebrated. It becomes a symbol of republican virtue against despotic power. the free citizen soldiers of Greece defending their homeland against the slave armies of Persia, resonates in an era grappling with questions of governance and liberty. The Enlightenment philosophers find in Thermopylae a parable about freedom. The Spartans at Thermopylae die free. The Persians live as slaves. Which is preferable? It has been invoked by revolutionaries fighting against imperial powers, by small nations resisting invasion, by anyone who sees themselves as outnumbered and outgunned but morally superior. During World War II, both Allied and Axis powers claimed Thermopylae as a symbolic precedent. The British, defending Greece against German invasion in 1941, explicitly compared themselves to Leonidas' forces. The Germans, conversely, used the story to celebrate martial valor. The same historical event serves completely different ideological purposes. In contemporary popular culture, Thermopylae has been reimagined countless times. Some emphasize the action and spectacle. Others focus on the philosophical questions about duty and sacrifice. The story proves endlessly fascinating because it touches something fundamental about human nature and the choices we make when confronted with impossible odds. Now, in the quiet after the story, let us consider what Thermopylae actually represents. Strip away the mythology, set aside the propaganda. At its core, Thermopylae is a story about choices. Every participant chose to be there. Xerxes chose to invade. Leonidas chose to defend. They were decisions made by people who understood the consequences. He invaded not from necessity, but from the logic of empire. The Greeks chose to resist because they had developed a political culture that valued autonomy above all else. To submit to Persia meant the end of the polis system, the absorption of Greek cities into satrapy bureaucracy. They fought not for abstract principles, but for a way of life that defined who they were. And he chose to make that purchase. The 300 chose to follow Leonidas because they were Spartans, and Spartans did not question orders from their king. But this explanation, while accurate, is insufficient. They were not automatons. They were men with families, with desires, with lives they valued. They chose to die because their culture had instilled in them a value system where honor mattered more than survival. What did their sacrifice accomplish? Tactically, very little. The Persians took the pass. They marched south. Strategically, the 3-day delay mattered. The Greek fleet had time to prepare. The defensive strategy had time to coalesce. Civilian evacuations reached completion. It demonstrated that courage and discipline could offset numerical inferiority, at least for a time. It gave the wavering cities a reason to resist rather than submit. Perhaps more importantly, it created a narrative. Humans are narrative creatures. We organize our understanding of the world through stories. After Thermopylae, the Greeks had a story they could tell themselves. We are the people who stood against impossible odds and fought to the last man. In a larger sense, Thermopylae raises questions that every generation must answer. Sparta created extraordinary warriors by creating a society that valued nothing but warfare. Is that a price worth paying? The Greeks were fighting for political autonomy, for the right to govern themselves according to their own traditions. This is a legitimate struggle then and now. But we should be careful about projecting contemporary values onto ancient people. Sparta was not a democracy. It was an oligarchy sustained by the brutal exploitation of the Helot population. Athens was a democracy, but only for adult male citizens. Neither society resembles our own. What we can say is that Thermopylae represents a moment when a small group of people, facing certain death, chose to stand and fight rather than flee. But the courage to face death without flinching is rare and valuable. The sun sets over the pass of Thermopylae. 25 centuries have passed since the battle. The landscape has changed. Siltation from the Spercheios River has extended the coastline. The narrow pass that once determined the battle is now nearly 5 kilometers from the sea. The geography that made the battle possible no longer exists, but the memory remains. On the monument, the ancient epitaph is inscribed again in modern Greek and in English. Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie. Every year, on the anniversary of the battle, ceremonies are held, wreaths are laid, speeches are given. The 300 and the 700 are remembered. Their names are read aloud, an act of collective memory spanning millennia. But the real monument to Thermopylae is not made of bronze or stone. It is the story itself, passed down through generations, adapted and retold, but never forgotten. We tell the story because it speaks to something fundamental in human nature, the desire to matter, to stand for something, to face the worst and not break. We tell the story because it reminds us that numbers are not destiny, that quality can overcome quantity, that a few determined people in the right place at the right time can change history. We tell the story because it illustrates the power of commitment. The Spartans at Thermopylae could have retreated. They could have rationalized survival. They could have found 1,000 excuses, but they stayed, and in staying, they became immortal. We tell the story because it warns us about the price of freedom. Liberty is not free, as the cliché goes, and Thermopylae makes the cost explicit. Those 300 men, those 700 Thespians, they paid the price so that Greece might remain free. We benefit from their sacrifice, 2 millennia removed. We tell the story because we need heroes, not the flawless paragons of myth, but real people who faced real fear and chose courage anyway. Leonidas was not superhuman. He was a man who combed his hair before battle because he wanted to die beautiful. That detail, so human and so strange, makes him real. And we tell the story because it is true. In an age of misinformation and constructed narratives, there is something powerful about a story that actually happened. 300 Spartans really did stand at Thermopylae. They really did hold the pass for 3 days. They really did die to the last man. This is not legend. This is history. The details may be disputed. Herodotus may have exaggerated the numbers. Later sources may have added embellishments, but the core truth remains. A small force held impossible odds long enough to matter. And in mattering, they achieved immortality. As you lie here, in comfort and safety, with no army approaching, no impossible choice to make, perhaps take a moment to consider what you would do. If the moment came, if everything you valued was at risk, if standing meant dying and running meant living, but living in shame, what would you choose? The Spartans knew their answer before the question was asked. They were raised for that answer, trained for it. It was written into their laws and their culture. When Leonidas selected his 300, he chose men who had already made the choice, perhaps before they were even born. We do not have that certainty. We are not Spartans. We are softer, more complex, more conflicted. But the question remains, and in asking it, in contemplating the example of those who answered with their lives, we keep the spirit of Thermopylae alive. The pass is quiet now. The armies are gone. The bones have long since turned to dust. But the echo of that battle reverberates through time. 300 Spartans stood against an empire. For 3 days they held, and in holding they proved that courage matters, that duty matters, that there are things worth dying for. The Persian Empire fell, eventually, conquered by Alexander the Great, a century and a half later. Sparta itself declined, its rigid society unable to adapt to changing times. Athens lost its democracy, regained it, lost it again. All the great powers of the ancient world are gone, reduced to ruins and tourist sites. But the story of Thermopylae survives, because stories of courage always survive, because we need to believe that when the moment comes, when everything is on the line, ordinary people can become extraordinary. Leonidas and his 300 believed this, and they proved it in the only way that truly matters, not with words, but with their lives. The sun has set. The story is told. Let your mind carry you where it will, to ancient battles or to peaceful rest. Either way, you walk now in the company of heroes. Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here obedient to their laws we lie. And so our odyssey ends. Rest well.